slide, and I promise this will only be, we're aiming for less than 30 minutes to get you in and out and ready for lunch. So this might be an obvious update, but we have hired a full-time worship leader and ministry coordinator. His name is Macon Armistead. We share a last name because he is my husband. And so we wanted to just give you some insight onto how this hiring process happened. In the United Methodist Church, we have something called a Staff Parish Relations Committee. And this operates as somewhat as an HR, if you think about the corporate world. And so there are folks who serve the Staff Parish Relations Committee at First United. Brent Robinson, Scott Smith, our senior pastor, and myself sit on that committee, but we do not vote. We do not have a voting presence, which means that when Macon and other candidates went through the application process, he applied and he interviewed with the staff parish, and they were the ones who made the vote to move forward with his employment. As you know, we had been searching for a part-time worship leader from May of 2022 until about April of 2023. And then we got a grant from the Florida Conference, in total of $150,000 over 2 years. And we felt that it was the best use of that grant money to put it towards personnel. And so we were able to make that a full-time position. Our vision team, which is our leadership, our vision team consists of Jan and Becky Pittard, of Alexis Long, of Rachel and Drew Meldrum, of Tammy Dunn, and Bob Cassie. They were made aware of the candidate. So our vision team isn't the one who does the hiring, but they were made aware of it, and they were enthusiastic. And then Staff Parish Relations Committee hired Macon. Next slide, please. We will have the one, the only Jan Pittard join the Staff Parish Relations Committee as our gathering place representative, because we want to make sure we have someone who is familiar with First United and familiar with our campus, so that in the future he knows what gathering place means and what First United means, and can do any of those. They do evaluations, they do reviews, which means that if there were a trouble with Macon, for example, if Macon decides he is going to be playing the trumpet on Sundays and you just can't stand the trumpet, and you feel, oh, I do not feel comfortable going to Amy talking about how terrible Macon's trumpet playing is, and I just got a big problem with this trumpet, you would go to the Staff Parish Relations Committee. So that gives a pathway for everyone to feel comfortable about staff and personnel. Same for me. If I start playing the trumpet instead of preaching and you just are fed up with the trumpet playing, it is Jan who is our representative. Jan, can you give a wave so everyone who knows who Jan is? Fabulous. And so that's kind of gives a little insight on how that works. Next slide, please. Ooh, budget breakdown. So our ministry coordinator, Macon Armistead, will talk about that.
Okay. Can you all hear me, or do you want me to use this?
Use the microphone.
Okay, I'm going to use this. All right, so as we're looking ahead for 2024, I wanted to give you some information about our finances. I know folks over there might not be able to see the screen. Sorry. I didn't design this room. So this gives you a snapshot of expenses for the gathering place. This is not everything, because there are tons of little bitty slivers of the pie that aren't even represented on this graph. But if you start looking around, you can see, there's two really big chunks, which are the salary of the two people that work here. And because Amy and I are both clergy, there are other things the conference requires that come with that hiring package. So pension, housing allowance. We don't have two housing allowances, just so you know. health insurance, all this kind of stuff. But then you can start seeing some other things: mission outreach, rent, special events, WLMC, worship leader, and ministry coordinator. So we understand that this is a large chunk of our budget is personnel. And so let's go to the simplified version just to kind of get an idea of this. About 80% of our budget right now of what we're spending is aimed at covering personnel. Okay, and ouch, yeah, that's just the reality of it. We're also 2 years in, so hopefully we'll have a larger budget that we can focus more on outward ministry and stuff like that. 10% of our budget, though, does go for operational costs. Our only operational costs at this time are rent for this building. But in the future, we will be starting to assume some administrative costs that First United is kind of just taking for us right now, so that when we fully charter and become our own congregation, it's not like, oh my gosh, why are we getting charged all this money that we haven't been having to pay? So that operational cost will probably increase as well.
Can I say a little bit about that?
Yes.
This is fun. We'll tag team a little bit. So what we mean by that as a chartered congregation, the Gathering Place is a campus of First United Methodist Ormond Beach, and we love that we are a campus of First United Methodist Ormond Beach. We have no intention of becoming an independent campus. Chartering just means that we are recognized as a church from the United Methodist Conference, and we can't charter until we become financially independent, that we reach certain benchmarks in worship. So we don't intend on chartering for a while, and that's pretty common. Usually on average for United Methodist churches, it takes about 7 years to charter. So that's not anything, and then that's when we start paying apportionments. Apportionments is, there's a better way to talk about this, but for layman's terms, it's sort of like taxes. Like we pay apportionments to the larger United Methodist Church. Currently, First United is footing the bill for apportionments. They are also, we utilize First United's communication director, their finance officer, their director of operations, Brett. So we share a lot of administrative costs. So we're very lucky and we love being a part of the First United family.
Right, so even when chartering, we will remain a part of the First United family. And then, so about 10% is operational costs, and then 10% is all the programmatic ministry that we do. So let's take a look at what those ministries are. The detail of our program ministry budget, the largest amount of money that we are aiming to spend, so this is looking ahead at our budget that's being approved for next year, is on local missions and outreach. We want to be a church that loves and serves our community, and so the most emphasis that we're going to put for our finances for program ministry is going to be in missions. You can see that special events, marketing, a general expense fund just for whatever else comes up. Those are also large items that we're spending, but it also covers kids ministry, worship, and all the feeding that we do. Feeding like outwardly serving, that would fall under missions, but when we have like meals and stuff here, is what we call meals. So that's a breakdown of our program ministry budget. Are there any questions so far just about budgeting for next year? Okay, let's move ahead. Let's talk about kind of some giving goals for the year. So as of August 2023, so a couple months ago, the Gathering Place had received from gifts, tithes, and offerings $39,497. At the end of 2022, I think we were about at $25,000. So we've done a lot better this year.
No, that at the end of 2022, we were at about 46,000.
So at August of,
but of August of
a year
2022, we were at 25.
So looking for end of 2023, we're aiming, this is just a goal, we're expecting that it could be around 60,000 to end the year with just gifts and offerings. So let's go to the next one. So that kind of informs how we move forward, how we're planning for next year. Our budgeted spending for 2024 is $193,229. It's a lot. We are receiving in the year of 2024 about almost $88,000 in grant funding. Those are two separate grants. One is running out in 2024, and one will remain with us until 2025, halfway through 2025, from the Florida Conference. To offset the remaining, income that we need to at least meet our spending, is about $105,000 to raise. Now that sounds like a lot of money to raise. And we're going to talk about how that might happen in just a second. But I also want you to know that in our savings account, what we call the Western Expansion Fund, what is our reserves. Right now we're sitting at about $174,000, almost $175,000, which is great. We're in a really good place with our savings. Let's go to the next one. So let's think about the goals that we want to set for the Gathering Place financially. In 2023, on average, we've had about 50 people, I don't want to just say in attendance, engaged, participating, committed, involved, active, 50 people in that way. We get a lot of people that come in and come out, but that's 50 is about the average of people that are regularly involved in giving and serving and all kinds of stuff. So ending a year with about $60,000 means that we're getting about $5,000 a month from giving, from tithes and offerings. So for 2024, our goal would be we had 75 people here on All-In Sunday. It was tight. So that's a conversation, is how do we rearrange the chairs for 75 people? But if we had 75 people on All-In Sunday, we can get 75 people here every Sunday. And so our goal for 2024 is to invite more people, to make more relationships, to get an average attendance of 75 people in 2024. And if the math is mathin', then about $6,500 a month would then come in from giving, which would give us about a $78,000 year-end income of gifts and offerings. Now, let's think about what that means for additional money to raise. So $105,000 was what we needed to raise, but if we got $78,000, that means there's about $27,000 left to raise for 2024. That $78,000 is our 2024 giving. The $105,000 was the offsetting from what our grant funding was offering our spending. So $27,000, how would we raise that? Let's go to the next one. So if our giving goal is $78,000, to get to about $98,000, which would be that difference of fundraise, we're wanting to raise $20,000 from outside funds. Now that may be additional grants, that may be corporate or secular partnerships, people that just want to invest in the Gathering Place. It could be all kinds of things, but that $20,000 is intended to not be an additional giving ask from the Gathering Place community. Okay, so the $98,000 minus the $105,000, that's about a $7.5 thousand remaining balance that we would not make for our spending. Just an average. This is kind of where we're imagining we'll be. If that were to happen, we could get $40,000 from other people, and that would be amazing. Yay. But even with that, that would be what we would pull out of our savings account, that Western Expansion Fund, which would still leave us with $167,000 in our savings account, in our Western Expansion Fund at the end of 2024, which is still a great place to be as a church plant in our savings. Taking less than $10,000, we would love to take out none, but that's okay. That is what we're anticipating. And working with people from Birch United, Brett, and some of the people on their administrative teams are really impressed and hopeful and glad about where we are financially. They think that we're on a great ramp. But we do want to be clear that some part of our finances will be changing because we are going to start ramping up to self-sustainability. That is the goal of being a church plant, is that we can fund ourselves, we can provide for ourselves. And so we will be taking in some more administrative costs and things like that, because we want to know what it's going to take to be a self-sustaining church.
Can I make another point? So we call ourselves the toddler of First United. We are 2 years old, which would make us a toddler. So in church planting, it takes on average about 6 years to be self-sustaining. Last year, we covered almost half of our budget through gifts and tithes and offerings. So some of you might be wondering, well, how did we get our reserves? That's a pretty healthy amount of reserves for a church plant. So when I came here, there was an anonymous gift of $150,000 called the Western Expansion Fund. And so our goal was to touch that as little as possible so that we can have reserves for long-term sustainability. This year, we were also given a gift of $50,000 from an anonymous giver. So we put in reserves as well. And we're also going to be using a part of that to pay for a consultant, creation incubator, which I will talk about in a little bit. So that gives you a snapshot of where those reserves came from and how we are doing a pretty good job of being able to reach our budget based on tithes and offerings. But as you can see, we have a ways to go. We have a goal of by the end of the year taking in $20,000, but that was from August. We don't have September numbers quite yet. It takes a little while to get those numbers. So hopefully we have about $15,000 to go to make our goal by December. So that puts a challenge to you. We understand that this is not the same demographic that First United is, and that was what was the challenge that was given to me. They're like, we do not want a First United 2.0 here. We want young adults. We want folks who might never feel comfortable coming into a traditional type church. But that means income differences vary. So it means that we are doing a lot with a little. On average, most church plants around this time have a budget of about $250,000 to $300,000. We have a budget of, in 2024, of $194. 2023, that budget was $146, I believe. So we are a lean machine. We have a much smaller budget compared to most church plants because we try to really, again, do a lot with a little and be very conservative in our spending. But that just, the reality is a lot of our budget is us, is personnel. Okay, Megan.
And just to kind of be clear, because we get this question sometimes, what about the sale of the property? What about all that money? In the United Methodist Church, money that was used for selling of property, capital, anything like that can only be used then for capital or capital improvements or property or buildings. So the money from that property that was sold, that does not go towards our budget, does not cover our salaries. That is a specific fund. So this additional, the Western Expansion gift, that additional $50,000, those are additional gifts and things that are coming in. And so what we're imagining for the property, what that would do for revenue stream, that would be things that we discussed with Creation Incubator, which is the next slide.
Thank you, Megan. Alrighty, so for those who might not know, the Gathering Place has 25 acres on Williamson Boulevard. So if you know where Advent Health is, the hospital, we are kind of next door, not quite next door neighbors with Advent Health, but in that corridor where there's a ton of new apartments, we're next to the cottages on the on Strickland Range Road and Williamson Boulevard, kind of a really big growing part of town. And so we originally, 20 years ago, First United made the very, very wise decision to purchase 75, somewhere around there, acres. So it was about 23 years years ago. They purchased 75 acres. In 2021, we sold 33 buildable acres for $6.6 million. So that is currently in the bank, and that's the money that Macon is talking about that we cannot use for operational funds. That is used as capital. So via the Book of Discipline, which is like the United Methodist guidebook, we won't call it a rule book, but a guidebook, that money can't be used to like pay for rent or pay for our salaries, which gives us a really exciting opportunity to get to develop something on Williamson property. So we have done some work talking to our neighbors. We did a survey of 75 of our neighbors to ask them, if you could just have a magic wand, what would you build across the street from you? And from the very beginning, our goal as a vision team is we're not just gonna build a traditional church on those 25 buildable acres. We want to build something that is gonna serve our community. But we don't wanna build something and think, oh my goodness, what this property could really use is a dance studio. And then that dance studio just sits empty because nobody wanted a dance studio. So we are getting some help from some consultants called Creation Incubator. The cool thing about Creation Incubator is that they are a United Methodist organization. His name is Michael Scott. So if you have watched The Office, that's his name, poor guy. So Michael Scott is way more competent than the Michael Scott on The Office. But he is a church planter. His previous job was in real estate development in Florida specifically. They are currently in Blue Springs, Missouri, and have done some good work there. But he's also a church planter. So that ticks a lot of boxes of we need someone who's familiar with the United Methodist system, who understands real estate development in Florida, and who has the mentality of church planting of the future, not church planting of the 1990s, because it just doesn't work anymore. It's a whole new landscape. So they are coming October 17th and October 18th, and they are going to do a site visit. We have some conversations lined up. If you are interested in talking to folks from Creation Incubator, talk to me and we can make sure that you're in the room if you have some strong opinions about Williamson property. They're going to be doing talking to guide team from First United. We have them lined up talking to Halifax Urban Ministry, folks from the Chamber of Commerce of Daytona, Economic Development Council, because we want them to have all the information on demographics so that we have a really good plan moving forward. So part of what they are hired to do, that we are under contract for 1 year, is that they are going to be helping us put together a business plan and a development plan on what it is that we are going to do on Williamson property that can do two things: serve our community and meet a need, and also provide some additional revenue, because tithes and offerings are just not cutting it these days. So how can we be self-sustaining but still do something in the community that is going to be very needed? And so some of the results of that survey is that we learned that a lot of people are very bored in this area. There's not a lot of family-friendly things to do. There's not a lot of green space or community centers in the LPGA area. There's not a lot of childcare in this area. So there's a lot of untapped potential on what we can do that is going to serve our neighbors in a way that isn't just building a church and thinking if we build it, they will come. And so the cost of Creation Incubator is about $13,500 for their consulting and coaching for 1 year. Bi-weekly, I'll have coaching with them. There's site visits as well as travel expenses. And that $50,000 gift that we were given is how we're going to pay for Creation Incubator. So we are excited to have them and to welcome them in the next couple of weeks. Any questions about Creation Incubator?
Where are they coming from?
They're coming from Blue Springs, Missouri. They're a part of the Great Plains Conference. So we're excited.
Blue Springs is a suburb of Kansas City. It's
Yes.
not, yeah, it's a big.
It's a big area. It's not like a rural.
And you're expecting this to just end after a year, or will it go on?
We have the option to continue to renew our contract with them, and it's just kind of in a year we'll know what we need from them. Do we need additional coaching? Do we need them to help us like see through development? And then we will go from there, kind of a la carte. What services, or we might not need any of their services. So we want to reassess in the future. But I'm very confident. It took a couple of months of us looking at other consultants. We probably talked to 5 other consultants before landing on Creation Incubator, just because of their niche understanding and how they can help us reassess and reimagine how we can use this land in a positive way. Sharna.
Do they have like general contractors or?
They-
Any permits or anything like that?
No, they would be, so we have a negotiating team, and our Halifax campus is in the process of doing some building revisioning, and there's there's gonna be a new building on our Halifax campus. So a lot of those resources can be shared. We've used Zev Cohen, which is a developer in this area, for our other campus, and we'll probably use that again. And we do have a real estate agent. Her name is Tira, who helped us sell the property to begin with. We also have a negotiating team and an investment team. So part of that $6.6 million is just kind of sitting in an investment account right now, and hopefully accruing some interest and accruing some, getting larger. And we will be able to use that as seed money. The entirety of the $6.6 million is not ours. We would have to go to the investment team with a proposal of, do we need 1 million? Do we need 3 million? Do we need all of it? So to be able to get access to those funds. But they are going to help us do that, and they're going to help us find developers who would meet our vision and mission.
Creation Incubator at the end of the 1 year, do they give us the blueprint?
Hopefully we will get that. Not hopefully, that's the point that we want to get to. So they're not going to be able to they are going to be able to contract out those types of blueprints. So my goal is for us to have a visual by the end of the year of what it looks like that we're going to do. We're going to have a concrete plan, a concrete way to pay for it, and maybe even partnership with development. It might not be us building this thing. It might be the YMCA building this thing, and we're partnering with them. So the goal is to make some strategic partnerships. Maybe that means partnering with the developer who bought our 33 acres. So time will tell.
Quick question, have they worked with any other churches in this area?
They have, he lived in Florida for about 5 years. So I don't know what Florida churches he's worked with, but they are currently got a $1.4 million grant to work with some churches in the Texas Annual Conference to do similar work. They've worked with folks in Maryland, and I believe they've worked with folks in Michigan. So they've been around for a while.
I'm going back to America. Can you explain about the grant fund that you showed us on chart 5, third or fourth?
The
The what?
grant funding?
Yeah.
So we have a remaining grant that we've received 2 years ago.
4 years
4 years ago, that will run out at the end of this year. We also received a grant that started, the $150,000 grant started in July, because it's
Of this year.
a July to June schedule of 2023. So we get part of that now from July to December. We're gonna get a full year in 2024, because we're getting the rest of that first year and then the start of the next year. And then in 2025, we'll get the last half of that from January to June. So this is our last year with that original grant, and it's our first year with the first half of the year with the new grant.
And in a snapshot, you were showing 20,000 raised by some programs, fundraising.
Yeah, 20,000 for additional fundraising, so not coming from.
How do we do that?
It could be a lot of different things, and that's if you have ideas. That's
Yes, if you
It's on
have,
the table.
yeah.
all is on the table.
Who do we ask?
That can be applying for grants, that can be special gifts, like that one-time $50,000 gift, that would be included in like a special gift. Because we can't count on that $50,000 gift every single year. Special gifts, wills or endowments.
Legacy, yeah.
Legacy gifts. We would also do like something like a fundraiser. What if, I do not think we will raise $20,000 with a fundraiser, but we're gonna have to get really creative about additional income sources.
Mhm.
So that's the stretch for us. I believe we could reach our giving goal, but that $20,000 of additional raising is gonna be hard, but we're gonna find some other revenues.
And what Creation Incubator might help us with too is sourcing with our neighbors. So we're so close to Advent Health Daytona. We're so close to Daytona State. Are there things that we can do together and kind of, get support that way? We don't know, but that's what we're going to think about.
So I have two things, because you just said neighbors, and it reminded me, I was thinking earlier, can you tell us what is going in on the property that was sold that will be right next
Yes.
to the church?
I can. So the developer is using it for mixed housing, which means there will be some townhouses, there will be some single-family homes, I believe some apartments, and an assisted living facility. They have found, at first it was only going to be an assisted living facility, but they found that folks in that stage of life actually like to live in mixed communities amongst age. So there's going to be some retail up front. And some exciting thing is part of that retail is earmarked for us to rent. So, but they said that they will most likely have that in the summer of 2024, and I'm not buying it. Most likely that'll be a couple of years away, but so we think that we would be able to move and rent for about 3,000 to 5,000 square feet of that retail space. I believe there might also be a hotel there as well, in that 33 acres. So we shall see, but they always kind of change plans. It's kind of morphed over the last 2 years, so that's the latest I've heard from what it'll be. But the good news is in 2 years, we will have, I don't want to say anything is permanent, but we hope that we'll have the opportunity to rent from them.
So the remaining piece of land, does it still have trees on it?
Mhm.
Or is it, empty lots?
Oh, it's got trees. It's got trees.
Lots of trees.
It's got critters.
Savannah grasslands, kind of tall.
So yeah, we have hopes of trying to do some events on there, but the reality is the wildlife. There's nowhere to park. We've considered putting up a tent out there and getting porta potties, but there really is no parking, and they're doing construction on Williamson right now, and that impacts our entrance to our event.
Yeah.
And I was just gonna say, if there's like an opening here or something,
We've done a bonfire there before. We've done Ash Wednesday in the past, but really with the construction on Williamson, it took away our parking and it took away our entrance. So it's now kind of a pain to get in there. But we've considered using it for special events and a pumpkin patch. Who knows? All right, next slide. 2-year anniversary. All right, so as you've noticed in the past couple of months, we've been experiencing some growth. 17 people joined the church 2 weeks ago, and we celebrated our 2-year anniversary with a large band, a food truck, and free t-shirts. And for those who were there, you knew there was a great feeling in the room. And so right now this was actually a pretty low Sunday, but on average we've been in the upper 30s, and with our online community have been averaging 55 people on a Sunday. So that's pretty good, and our goal is to be at 75 next year. All right. Okay, exciting thing. Oh, Zaya, look at you looking so nice. So we're starting a new sermon series after the Come As You Are series called Gifted for More, which is about spiritual gifts. So we will have a spiritual gifts inventory. Macon is going to be preaching because he has, not the whole series, just one Sunday, but he has some gifts around, he is a spiritual director. So he has some gifts on how to connect your gifts and how to serve. And so as always, we're a scrappy church with 2 staff members, and we do not ever intend to be a staff-heavy church, which means we're grassroots, we're homegrown, and it'll help you be able to connect with what your spiritual gifts are and how to serve. Because we would hate to have someone doing tech who's really meant to be up there worshiping, or doing kids ministry when really they should be greeting, or someone in the setup team who should be serving communion, or serving in a certain way that meets your gifts. So that's going to be our November sermon series called Gifted for More. All right.
Are you gonna include the inventory?
Yes, so we're going to be doing the inventory at the end of the series.
Towards the
right?
end.
Towards the end. Okay, and then our last thing before we let you go is that we have a Q&A session here on Monday, October 23rd, with Scott Smith, who is the senior pastor of First United. He has now been at First United for 10 years, and 10 years ago, he did a listening session. So I know the Pitters, you said you were in a listening session. Were y'all a part of a listening session? And so for his 10-year tour, he's doing another listening session, but ours is going to be specific towards the gathering place. So just kind of like how we are right now, he'll be up here doing a Q&A. We will have a light dinner provided, and then there's an opportunity to sign up beforehand and type in a question you might have so that he can prepare for it. He's pretty great on the spot, but sometimes if your question is very technical, it's helpful to have it beforehand.
Question about the gathering place?
Questions about the gathering place, about First United, about Williamson property, about, this isn't a Q&A, like a theological Q&A, like why was it that it took 3 days for Jesus to rise from the dead?
That's 20 years, Sitar. Scott's 20th tour.
This is more about the future of our church and our congregation, to give him some feedback about how you think things are going, and it's a listening session for him to kind of help chart what the next 10 years might look like.
You hate the trumpets.
Mm-hmm. You don't like the trumpets? That's who you talk to. We have never had trumpets in worship, by the way.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, unless there is, in our Gifted for More series, we might find out someone
Trumpeteers.
has a spiritual gift. Exactly.
We need a brass section.
All right, that is all we have for you. Do you have any questions about the information that we have provided? And if so, save it for the 23rd, because Scott might have some interesting answers.
And you two have done a good job explaining
Yeah.
everything. Thank you.
Great. And before I go, don't forget that you can give online those QR codes, or we have a box right here that you can drop in any cash or check if you still carry cash.
I know.
I know, I'm like,